All right, here we go. Lesson 6, hardware and software interaction. A couple things you're going to need to know with this lesson. We're going to break it up into 2 parts, and also that you're going to need to take some notes. So if you haven't taken notes in prior videos, I need you to do that. It is a mandatory thing. I need you to take some notes and to come into class with some questions. That shows me that you did your homework and did watch the lesson. So let's roll right into it. Things we're going to do, we're going to break this into 2 parts, but the very first part of this video is going to be how to identify how hardware and software interact. We're also going to explain how a software program works, and you will also be able to describe the difference between application and system software. So what you see in the red here is what we're going to do in this video. We're going to discuss and learn the term algorithm, application software, beta testing, flowcharts, inputting, and the actual term software. The other things, again, for vocabulary, we're going to discover the term software development and system software. So we'll go through some of those things. The other stuff we will get to in the next video. So everything starts with the inputting. You must have some sort of hardware device in order to input your stuff into software so that your computer can receive the input from you. And so that's really what it's called. It's inputting, and it's simply the process of putting your using the input device to enter your data. For example, I'm using a webcam here, which is a input device, and it is inputting data to a software called Camtasia Studio. So I use this input device, and a software I'm going to interact with is going to be Camtasia Studio. So you do that with pretty much everything that you do within a computer. The role of software itself, the software is the actual programming code, and it's written to provide instructions to the software so it can perform tasks. Very simple. That, you know, in the example here where I'm videotaping myself, it is taking the input, it's going to kind of process it up a little bit. I'll add words or whatever I need to do as far as editing. That's all done within the software, and then it's going to perform a task. In this situation, it's going to reproduce the video edited the way I wanted it edited. So you can look at it a couple different ways. You can also use things such as keyboards. Putting input, software receives the information, translates it, and then does what you need to do with it to perform a specific task. Makes the hardware perform a specific task. It may be printing, it may be just simply providing something on the screen. The way the hardware and the software interact is how a computer processes data and allows us to use a computer to complete many tasks. Okay, pretty common knowledge there. The computer processes data by applying rules called algorithms. And this is one of our terms. You need to know this. Algorithm is a set and clearly defined logical steps that solve a problem. So when you hear that term algorithm, which you'll hear a lot in the next 2 classes, the whole process of developing software is, a programmer writes an algorithm, and it rewrites the steps in a formal programming language. That's the, depending on the type of function that the software is going to do, will depend upon the type of software languages that you use. And so that would be a great question when you decide, because we're actually going to do a project where you're going to develop an algorithm. You're going to have to decide what programming language is going to be used here, and I can help you out with that. So having a formal programming language, and then the specialized computer program will translate it into machine language. We know that machine language is simply a series of ones and zeros, or in the true base of the sense, it's either electricity, impulse on, or impulse off. So, but then the computer understands that and then allows the hardware to understand what we're expecting it to do. So recap that. Algorithm is simply a set of clearly defined logical steps to help solve a problem. And software development is one of our terms, and it is a multi-step process that usually begins with someone recognizing a need to perform a task more efficiently or effective using a computer. and I will have you brainstorm some ideas on what ways or tasks that can be performed based on need, and then as you can see, usually that spurs the development of software. And if you want to look at it in a certain way, think about it as an app for an iPhone. Okay, and an iPhone app is an application software. Whenever there's a need, somebody's like, oh, there's an app for that. Well, that's exactly what that means, and usually it's because someone has developed a software for that. Often a programmer works out logical steps for the algorithm by using something called a flowchart. I know you may have seen flowcharts before. I think on our next slide I actually have a picture of one. But it will show the different paths that the program will take depending on what data is inputted. So we'll discuss this in depth within class and within your project of what you're going to do. So this is an example of a real basic flowchart, and it's just kind of the defining process of setting up software. But you have to start, and it's a big circle. You write a descriptive name for the process. That may be, okay, we're gonna make mac and cheese. Determine your inputs. Well, you're going to need milk, you're going to need butter, you're going to need macaroni, you're going to need water, you're going to need heat, you're going to need a pot, hopefully you'll need a spoon. So you see what we're doing is we're all the things that we need, and then from that point we're going to develop our sequential steps, and therefore builds a little bit more of the flow chart. We'll set the steps up, and at that point, when everything leads to different directions, as far as decisions that must be made through the process, you end up with a well-developed flowchart. It's something that evolves, it's something that changes a lot of times when you find new mistakes. So that's what a flowchart is. The next thing that happens after a programmer sets up his flowchart, he determines what and writes code. And the code is uses a set of formal text and terms called syntax, and the computer translates this code and executes the commands. The word syntax is actually one of our words, and I actually threw this up for you. It's the definition of it, but it just shows it's an arrangement of words and phrases to create well-formed sentences. Now that's the language part of it, but the next part is kind of more along our lines, which is a set of rules for or an analysis of language. And if you know what I'm talking about computer code, and it has to be written a certain way. If there's one comma out of place, if there is one dash, if something is got a space that's not supposed to be there, the whole thing will break. And there's a whole process of going through that, and we'll talk about that in a second. But that's what's really called the quality control, when you go through the process of checking everything, making sure everything is running correctly, but it involves running systematic tests, and that is simply called debugging. And debugging is finding and correcting errors in code. It's a mundane job. You have to really like that kind of work to do it. Some people love it, and they live, eat, and breathe that kind of work, and they get paid well to do it. And then you go into a phase, once you've kind of worked through your bugs, is you go into a phase called beta testing. And hopefully you've heard that term before. Sometimes Apple will launch software based on a beta test, meaning that they're testing it and they're looking for more bugs. It's kind of a more formal launch of an informal launch of a software. They're just kind of testing it with people.